Hey folks, welcome back. So today we're going over the View tab within Power BI within the query editor. So this one is going to show you how to look at the column profile, your data bar errors, and then other features as well. So when it comes to cleanup, this video is really going to help you when it comes to understanding your data. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so first up we have query settings. So it's by default, it's going to be highlighted. So if I just deselect it, all that's going to happen is it's going to pop the query settings pane open to where you can see your applied steps and your properties. Next, we have formula bar. So I could just deselect that, bring the formula bar back in, and that's all within layout. So next we have data preview. So this one's going to show monospace once I click on it, and it's going to just reset the font and text format so everything's aligned properly. So the use case behind this one is if you're scrolling through something such as employee ID and something just jumps out at you because you have more than 7 digits, for example, that's where monospace really comes in because you can easily identify that difference. So next up we have show white space. So if you hover over this one, it's just going to say show white space in new line characters. So it's basically just going to tell you if you have any weird spacing that's going to be within your text. It's just going to highlight that data. I honestly don't ever use this, so I just kind of deselect it and leave it as is. Next up we have column quality. So that's what I was talking about when it came to your data bars. That's what I like to call it at least. As you can see here, the green means everything is good, right? So valid 100%. So that means every cell is filled out within the column. There's no blank values. There's no mismatching formats. In essence, green means good, but it doesn't always mean that anything but green is not good. But before I talk about that, we want to make sure that our text values that are here are always going to be formatted properly based upon what the column data is. You'll see errors usually when you have different formats. So say for instance you have a column where the cells are going to be full of date formats and then text format, and then you try to change the type to either a date or a text, it's going to throw an error because now it's reading two different formats. So you always want to have the same format in each column and then kind of spread those different data points out amongst other columns. And then empty is just going to be something like this. So we have 54% empty, right? So this is not necessarily an error because not everybody has a departure date. The reason they're empty is because these are actually non-chargeable. These dates that are inputted here are going to be what feeds into DGMS. So we don't want those charged. So by default, how it's coded is that it's not going to have a value present here. So that's the reason why it's empty. So in reality, it's actually correct. So even though we see a 54% empty rate, we're actually 100% accurate. So that's the way you have to look at your data to really fully understand it. And if you don't, before you start building things, I would just dive deep into what each column presents so that creates less confusion as you move forward. So next up we have column distribution. So this is just a example of different types of values you may see within your columns of data. So as you can see, 32 are distinct, meaning you have 32 types of absences for reason descriptions that are going to be repeated throughout this column. And then you have 6 that are unique because 6 aren't really used more than once. So that's how you kind of look at this. And once again, you can see that within the departure data as well, 459 distinct and then 64 unique departure dates. And then lastly, within data preview, we have column profile. From value distribution, this is just going to show you what totals to 100%. So what's rolled into the column that we're looking at. So what's the distribution rate? So parental is 6%, admin is 8%, and all totals to 100%. On the far left, we have column stats. So as you know, by default, the table preview is always going to be 1,000 rows. Now we can change that, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But this analysis is based upon the 1,000 rows that are present here. It's also going to tell you what's an error, what's empty, how many are distinct. So you have the 5 that are distinct here, unique. It's also going to tell you the empty string. So that's going to tell you the column quality error rate that we showed earlier, right? And then lastly, the min and max. So this is really going to matter when you're looking at numbers more than anything else. So next we have go to column. So let's just say, for instance, we want to jump to a column. We're going to click on begin date, press OK, and now here we are. So that's just another way to get to your data faster in case, you're on a time crunch or something, or you just have a preference of using this. So next up we have always allow. So this one is essentially going to prevent Power BI from asking for permission when it comes to loading data. So rather than doing a manual step acquiring that permission from you, it can just bypass that automatically. All right, so next up we have Advanced Editor. So this one is going to show you all the applied steps that we took to transform the data, and it's going to show you the entire M code language of what was actually done. So as you know, Power BI is a low code, no code application. So this is really what's happening in the background if you were to write something manually. All right, and next we have query dependencies. That's going to be the last thing we're going to select here. And I'm just going to zoom in, and now you can see where each data point really comes from. And then wherever your mouse pointer zooms in is where it's going to go. And then you could also click and drag and kind of move it around as well. And another tip I want to provide you is going to be any format that you make here is automatically going to go into your data view. However, it might be easier just to change the date format depending on what kind of format you like within data view. That's where I do it personally as well. But anything that you do in data view or table view is not going to push into query editor. So it only has one-way traffic, if you will. And then last but not least, in table view, this is where you can see all your rows of data. So now we have 5,281. And if you just want to play around, filter through, slice and dice here, this is where you can do it as well if you can't see all your data within Query Editor. With that said, that's all I have for today, folks. Thanks for watching.